The notification chimed at 11:47 p.m., and like an idiot, I checked it. 3 years of marriage had trained me to expect Zara's late-night updates from her endless work events, but this one made my coffee mug freeze halfway to my lips. "Sorry, honey, running super late. Brett's surprise birthday party went longer than expected. Don't wait up." I stared at the screen in our dimly lit kitchen, rain pattering against the windows of our modest colonial home. Brett Hammond, Zara's boss at Stallworth Holdings, the guy she'd been working late with 3 nights a week for the past month. The same Brett whose social media I'd scrolled through just last week while waiting for Zara to finish another urgent project meeting. His birthday was in July. It was March. "My name's Drake Torin, and I fix things for a living. Industrial design, specifically, taking broken systems and making them work better. 10 years in the Army taught me to spot problems before they became disasters." Right now, every alarm bell in my head was screaming. I grabbed my laptop and pulled up Brett's Facebook page. There it was, born July 15th. His wife Vivian had posted birthday wishes just 4 months ago, complete with photos of their anniversary dinner at some upscale restaurant downtown. The pieces clicked together like a rifle being assembled. The late meetings, the new perfume, the way Zara had started dressing differently, wearing outfits that cost more than my monthly truck payment, the hushed phone calls that stopped when I entered the room. I wasn't just being paranoid, I was being played. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was a photo. Zara and several co-workers around a table at Romano's, the expensive Italian place across town. Brett sat right next to her, his arm casually draped across the back of her chair. The timestamp read 10:23 p.m., over an hour ago. But here's the thing about being a detail-oriented person. You notice everything. Like how Zara's lipstick was smudged, how Brett's tie was loosened in a way that suggested more than casual dining, how everyone else in the photo looked like they were ready to leave, but these two looked like they were just getting started. I set the phone down and walked to our home office, where Zara kept her work calendar synced to our shared computer. 3 clicks later, I was staring at months of strategy sessions and client development meetings that all seemed to happen at hotels. Not conference rooms, hotels. The Marriott downtown, the Holiday Inn by the airport, the boutique place on Elm Street that advertised discreet business accommodations. My hands weren't shaking. They were steady as a surgeon's. That's what happens when your training kicks in. Emotion gets filed away, and you start thinking tactically. I screenshot everything, printed the calendar entries, grabbed the credit card statements from Zara's desk drawer, the ones she thought I never looked at. Charges at Victoria's Secret, expensive dinners for 2, a hotel room last Tuesday when she'd told me she was visiting her sister in Springfield. Her sister lives in Portland. By 12:30 a.m., I had a folder thick enough to choke a horse. But I needed more than evidence. I needed strategy, and for that, I needed someone who understood corporate politics better than an ex-soldier turned industrial designer. I needed Vivian Hammond. Brett's wife wasn't just any corporate spouse. She was the CEO of Stallworth Holdings, the woman who actually ran the company while her husband played middle management and apparently played around with my wife. Finding her personal contact information took exactly 4 minutes of searching through Zara's work contacts. Vivian's cell phone number was right there in the company directory, listed under Emergency Executive Contact. This qualified as an emergency. I composed the text message 3 times before sending it. "Mrs. Hammond, this is Drake Torin, Zara's husband. I believe we need to discuss your husband's birthday celebration tonight. I have documentation you should see." The response came back in 30 seconds. "Meet me at the office in 20 minutes. Parking garage level B2. Bring everything." I threw on jeans and a jacket, grabbed the folder, and headed out into the rain. The drive to Stallworth Holdings took 15 minutes through empty streets. The building loomed against the cloudy sky like a glass monument to corporate ambition, 12 stories of steel and windows, with the executive floors lit up even at this hour. The parking garage was a concrete cavern that smelled of oil and exhaust. Vivian Hammond stood next to a black BMW, wearing a business suit despite the late hour. She looked like someone who'd been expecting this conversation for a long time. "Mr. Torrin," she said, extending a manicured hand. "Thank you for reaching out. I assume you've discovered what I've suspected for weeks." I handed her the folder. "Your husband's birthday isn't today." "No," she said, flipping through the printouts with the efficiency of someone reviewing quarterly reports. "It isn't, but this hotel receipt is from today, and this credit card charge at Romano's matches the photo your wife posted on Instagram 40 minutes ago." She had her own folder. "How long have you known?" I asked. "Since February. Corporate credit cards leave digital trails, Mr. Torrin. Every expense report crosses my desk eventually." Her voice was ice-cold professional, but I caught the edge underneath. "I've been waiting for the right moment to address this situation." "What kind of moment?" She smiled, and it wasn't pleasant. "The kind where I have a witness, someone with just as much motivation as I do to see this handled properly." Lightning flickered across the sky, illuminating the concrete walls around us. In that moment, I realized I wasn't just discovering my wife's affair. I was being recruited into something much bigger. "What did you have in mind?" I asked. "Corporate policy violations, misuse of company resources, breach of professional conduct." She closed the folder with a snap. "Your wife and my husband have been very careless with documentation, Mr. Torrin, sloppy even. And I believe in accountability, both personal and professional." She walked toward the elevator, expecting me to follow. They wanted to play games with other people's lives. Now they get to learn the rules. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. The elevator doors opened, revealing polished steel and the faint scent of expensive cologne. As we rode up to the executive floor, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months: control. For the first time since reading that text message, I wasn't the victim of someone else's deception. I was part of the solution. The doors opened onto a hallway lined with glass-walled offices. Even at 1 a.m., the building hummed with the low energy of security systems and climate control. Our footsteps echoed on marble floors as Vivian led me toward the corner office, Brett's office. "Security cameras?" I asked. "Record everything," she confirmed, "including who uses key cards to access the building after hours, including which employees have been meeting in hotel rooms on company time." She swiped her executive access card, and the office door clicked open. Brett's workspace was exactly what I'd expected. Oversized desk, leather chairs, wall-mounted television, and family photos that suddenly seemed like props in a stage play. Vivian moved to the desk and powered up Brett's computer. "Executive access overrides passwords," she explained, pulling up email accounts and calendar applications. "Company policy allows full monitoring of employee communications." "Is this legal?" "Completely. Every employee signs digital privacy waivers as part of their employment agreement." She clicked through screens with practiced efficiency. "Including your wife." Email after email appeared on the screen. Dinner plans disguised as business meetings, hotel reservations made through company accounts, messages that started professional and became increasingly personal over the past 2 months. "Here," Vivian said, pointing to a message thread from last week. "Brett to Zara. Can't wait for our strategy session tonight. I've reserved the usual room." Zara's response: "Should I bring the presentation materials we discussed?" "Brett, just bring yourself." I leaned back in the leather chair, processing the evidence. "They're not even trying to hide it." "Arrogance," Vivian said. "They assumed no one was paying attention. Brett forgot that his wife runs the company he works for." She pulled up another screen. Expense reports. Hundreds of charges for meals, hotels, and entertainment over the past 3 months. All approved by Brett's supervisor, who happened to be Vivian herself. I've been documenting everything, she continued, building a case, but I needed corroborating evidence from outside the company, personal testimony from someone directly affected. You needed me. I needed you. She turned from the computer screen. The question is, how far are you willing to take this? I thought about Zara's smug smile in that restaurant photo, about the lies she'd been telling while I worked extra hours to pay for her new wardrobe, about the 3 years of marriage that had apparently meant nothing to her. How far can we take it? Vivian's smile was sharp as a blade. Corporate termination, public humiliation, financial consequences, social disgrace. She paused. Complete professional destruction. No legal trouble for us? None. Everything we're doing falls within company policy and legal rights. They created this situation, Mr. Torin. We're simply documenting the consequences. I looked around Brett's office, at the awards on his walls, the expensive furniture, the corner windows overlooking the city. In a few hours, none of this would belong to him anymore. When do we start? We already have. The next morning arrived gray and cold, matching my mood perfectly. I'd gotten exactly 2 hours of sleep, but my mind was razor sharp with purpose. Vivian and I had spent until 3 a.m. documenting evidence, and now came the interesting part, watching my wife lie to my face. Zara stumbled into the kitchen at 7:30, looking like she'd spent the night partying instead of sleeping. Her makeup was smudged, her hair disheveled, and she moved with the careful precision of someone fighting a hangover. "Morning, honey," she mumbled, heading straight for the coffee maker. "Sorry I got in so late. Brett's party went way longer than expected." I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop open, sipping coffee and watching her performance. 3 years of marriage, and I'd never realized what a terrible actress she was. "How was the birthday boy?" I asked casually. "Oh, you know Brett. He loves being the center of attention." She poured coffee with shaking hands. "The whole team was there. We ended up at Romano's until almost midnight." "Sounds fun. Did you get him a nice gift?" She froze for just a second, long enough to confirm everything I'd discovered. We all chipped in for something. A watch, I think." "That's thoughtful." I closed the laptop and stood up. "I have to head to the office early today. Big project meeting." "Okay, honey. Have a good day." She kissed my cheek, and I caught a whiff of cologne that definitely wasn't mine. The drive to my own office gave me time to think. I worked for Patterson Industrial Design, a small firm that specialized in manufacturing efficiency. My job was identifying problems in complex systems and fixing them before they caused bigger issues. Today, I was applying those same skills to my personal life. My phone buzzed with a text from Vivian. "Phase 2 begins at 2 p.m. Conference room A. I'm calling them both in for a performance review." I spent the morning handling legitimate work projects, but my mind kept drifting to the afternoon's plan. By lunch, I was ready to watch my wife's world fall apart. At 1:45 p.m., I parked in the Stallworth Holdings garage and took the elevator to the executive floor. Vivian met me at the reception desk, carrying a thick manila folder. "They're both here," she said quietly. "Brett's been nervous all morning. Zara seems oblivious." "Good. The element of surprise works in our favor." We walked toward conference room A glass-walled space that offered no privacy from the rest of the office. I could see Zara and Brett sitting at the polished table, chatting casually. They looked comfortable together. Too comfortable. Vivian opened the door, and their conversation stopped immediately. "Brett, Zara, thank you for making time on short notice," Vivian said, taking a seat at the head of the table. "I've asked Mr. Torin to join us today as part of an internal review process." Zara's face went pale. "Drake, what are you doing here?" "Helping with a company investigation," I said, sitting across from her. "Don't worry, honey, this won't take long." Brett shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "Investigation? I'm not sure I understand." Vivian opened the manila folder and spread documents across the table like a dealer laying out cards. Hotel receipts, credit card statements, email printouts, expense reports. 3 months of evidence laid bare under the conference room's fluorescent lights. This is a review of recent company expenditures and employee conduct, Vivian said in her CEO voice. Specifically, misuse of corporate resources and violations of professional behavior policies. Zara stared at the documents, her mouth slightly open. Brett tried to maintain composure, but sweat was beading on his forehead. "I'm not sure what you're implying," Brett said carefully. "I'm not implying anything. I'm stating facts." Vivian picked up a hotel receipt. March 8th, Marriott downtown. Company credit card charge for $247. Expense report filed as client development meeting. She looked at Brett. "Which client were you meeting?" That was a legitimate business expense." "Really?" "Because the hotel's electronic records show the room was occupied by 2 people who checked in together and stayed overnight." She slid another document across the table. "The same night your calendar shows a strategy session with Ms. Torrin." Zara finally found her voice. "This is a misunderstanding. We were working late and needed a quiet place to—" "To what?" I interrupted. "Because your text messages suggest you were doing something other than work." I pulled out my phone and read from the screenshots I'd taken. "Can't wait for our private meeting tonight. I've been thinking about you all day." That's from you to Brett, Zara, last Tuesday at 3:47 p.m. The conference room went silent except for the hum of air conditioning. Through the glass walls, I could see other employees trying to look busy while obviously watching our meeting. Brett cleared his throat. "Look, I think there's been some confusion about..." "About what?" Vivian cut him off. "About the 15 hotel charges in the past 2 months? About the restaurant bills for 2 people during alleged team meetings? About the company credit card being used for personal entertainment?" She spread more documents across the table. "Romano's Restaurant, March 15th. Table for 2, champagne service, $180 dinner. Expense report, client relations." "But according to your calendar, Brett, you had no client meetings scheduled that day." Zara was staring at the table, her face flushed with embarrassment and anger. "Drake, I can explain everything." "Please do," I said. "Start with whose birthday party you attended last night." "It was Brett's—" She stopped, realizing the trap. "Brett's birthday is July 15th, I said calmly. "I checked. His wife threw him a party 4 months ago. So whose birthday were you really celebrating?" The silence stretched until Brett finally spoke. "This is a private matter between consenting adults. Whatever personal relationships exist outside of work—" "Don't exist outside of work," Vivian interrupted. "These hotel meetings happened during business hours using company resources while both of you were being paid to perform your jobs. That makes it a company matter." She pulled out another set of documents. Company Policy, Section 4.7. Employees engaged in personal relationships that interfere with professional responsibilities or create conflicts of interest are subject to disciplinary action up to and including termination. Brett's composure finally cracked. "You can't fire me for this. I have rights." "You have the right to find new employment," Vivian said coldly. "Both of you, effective immediately." "Wait," Zara said, panic creeping into her voice. "This is my career, my life. You can't just—" "I can, and I am." Vivian closed the folder. "Security will escort you both from the building. Your personal belongings will be boxed and delivered. Company credit cards and access badges are to be surrendered immediately." The room erupted in desperate voices as both Brett and Zara tried to argue, plead, and negotiate. But Vivian had made her decision, and I could see the relief in her eyes. This had been building for months, and now it was finally over. Through the glass walls, I watched other employees gathering to witness the spectacle. Phones were coming out. Within an hour, this story would be all over social media and the local business community. Brett stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. "This is harassment. I'll have my lawyer contact you." "Please do," Vivian replied. "I'll have our legal department send him copies of all the evidence we've compiled. I'm sure he'll find it educational." Zara turned to me with tears in her eyes. "Drake, please. We can work this out. It's not what you think." I looked at my wife, soon-to-be ex-wife, and felt nothing but cold satisfaction. "It's exactly what I think, Zara. And now everyone else knows it too." Security arrived within minutes. 2 professional guards who'd clearly handled this type of situation before. They waited patiently while Brett and Zara gathered their personal items from the conference table, then escorted them toward the elevator. As the doors closed, I caught a glimpse of their faces, shocked, humiliated, and finally understanding that their actions had consequences. Vivian and I sat alone in the conference room, surrounded by the evidence of our victory. "How do you feel?" she asked. I considered the question. 3 hours ago, I'd been married to someone I thought I knew. Now I was free of someone who'd been lying to me for months. "Like I can finally breathe again," I said. "Good, because this is just the beginning." "What do you mean?" She smiled that sharp smile again. "Corporate termination was the professional consequence. Now comes the personal reckoning." The next 48 hours unfolded like a masterclass in social destruction. Word of Brett and Zara's termination spread through the business community faster than a computer virus, and I had a front-row seat to watch their reputations crumble. It started with the company announcement. Vivian, ever the professional, sent a carefully worded email to all Stallworth Holdings employees. Effective immediately, Brett Hammond and Zara Torin are no longer with the company due to violations of professional conduct policies. All questions regarding personnel matters should be directed to human resources. But corporate speak couldn't contain the real story. By Thursday morning, my phone was buzzing with calls from mutual friends, neighbors, and even Zara's family members who'd heard various versions of what happened. I was sitting in my home office, finally able to concentrate on actual work, when my neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, knocked on the door. She was 73 years old, had lived on our street for 40 years, and knew everyone's business better than the FBI. "Drake, honey," she said, holding a casserole dish. "I heard about the trouble with Zara. Thought you might need a home-cooked meal." "That's very kind, Mrs. Patterson." "Thank you. Such a shame," she continued, settling into my kitchen chair like she planned to stay. "Though I have to say, I'm not entirely surprised." "Oh?" "Well, I don't like to gossip, but I did notice her coming home at odd hours these past few weeks. And there was that night I saw a strange car in your driveway. Expensive-looking thing. Not the kind you'd drive." I poured her a cup of coffee. "When was this?" 2 weeks ago, maybe 3, late on a Tuesday night. She came home in that car instead of her own, and someone else drove it away after she went inside." Mrs. Patterson sipped her coffee thoughtfully. "I figured it was work-related, but now it makes more sense." "Indeed it does." She patted my hand sympathetically. "You're better off without her, dear. A man deserves a wife who comes home to him, not one who's gallivanting around town with her boss." After Mrs. Patterson left, I realized that Zara's deception had been visible to everyone except the person who mattered most. Me. The signs had been there for months, but I'd been too trusting, or too busy, to notice. That afternoon, my phone rang. Zara's number. "Drake, we need to talk," she said without preamble. "This whole situation has gotten out of hand." "Has it? Because from where I sit, everything's finally making sense." "Don't be dramatic. Look, I made some mistakes, okay? But destroying my career wasn't the answer. We're married. We should have handled this privately." I leaned back in my desk chair, amazed by her audacity. "Privately? Like you handled your affair privately?" "It wasn't an affair. Brett and we connected on a professional level. Things got complicated, but it wasn't some sordid betrayal. Hotel rooms, Zara. Multiple hotel rooms, expensive dinners, Lies about birthday parties. What would you call it? Silence on the other end, then. I want to come home. We can work through this. No. What do you mean, no? I mean, no. You can't come home. I changed the locks yesterday. Your belongings are packed and waiting on the front porch. You can't just kick me out of my own house. Actually, I can. The house is in my name, remember? We never got around to adding you to the deed. Another oversight that was now working in my favor. You have until Sunday to collect your things. The conversation deteriorated from there, with Zara alternating between anger, pleading, and threats. I hung up feeling lighter than I had in months. Friday brought a call from Victor Chen, my old army buddy who now worked as a private investigator. We'd stayed in touch over the years, meeting for beers and war stories whenever he was in town. Heard you had some excitement this week, he said. Word gets around in the security business. Good news travels fast. Bad news travels faster. Your wife and her boss made quite a splash in certain circles. He paused. You need any help with the divorce proceedings? I know some excellent lawyers. I might take you up on that. Right now, I'm just trying to process everything. Understandable. But Drake, you should know, this Brett character isn't taking his termination well. He's been making some noise about wrongful dismissal and defamation. Let him make noise. Vivian Hammond has enough evidence to bury him in court. Maybe so, but desperate people do stupid things. Watch your back. Victor's warning proved prophetic. That evening, as I was grilling dinner on my back patio, Brett's silver BMW pulled into my driveway. He got out looking like he'd been drinking, his usually perfect hair disheveled and his expensive suit wrinkled. I set down my beer and walked around to the front yard, keeping my distance but staying visible to the neighbors. Mrs. Patterson was watering her garden next door, and I could see her watching the interaction with keen interest. Brett, I said calmly, this is a surprise. We need to talk, Drake, man to man. I'm listening. He swayed slightly on his feet. This whole thing has been blown way out of proportion. Zara and we had a connection, sure, but it wasn't worth destroying 2 careers over. I didn't destroy anything. You and Zara made choices. Now you're dealing with consequences. Consequences. His voice rose. I lost my job. My wife is filing for divorce. My reputation is ruined. Sounds about right. You smug piece of... He stepped forward aggressively, then seemed to remember where he was. This isn't over, Drake. I have lawyers. I have connections. You think you can just humiliate me and walk away? I think you humiliated yourself. I just documented it. Brett's face flushed red with anger and alcohol. You have no idea what you've started. No idea who you're messing with. Enlighten me. He pointed a shaking finger at my chest. I built relationships in this city while you were playing soldier boy overseas. I know people, important people. They don't like seeing their friends treated unfairly. Your friends might want to distance themselves from you right about now. Adultery and corporate fraud aren't great for networking. This isn't over, he repeated, backing toward his car. You and that witch Vivian think you're so smart. We'll see how smart you are when my lawyers get through with you. He drove away with a screech of tires, leaving me standing in my driveway with Mrs. Patterson as a witness to his threats. Charming fellow, she called from her garden. Should I call the police? Not yet, but maybe keep an eye out for his car in the neighborhood. Already on it, dear. That night I called Vivian to report Brett's visit. She listened without interruption, then sighed heavily. He's desperate, she said. Desperate people make mistakes, but they can also be dangerous. I'll have building security keep him away from the office, but you should be careful at home. I can handle Brett Hammond. I'm sure you can. But Drake, there's something else you should know. I've been reviewing more company records, and I think Brett's problems go deeper than just the affair. What do you mean? Financial irregularities, expense reports that don't add up, vendor contracts that seem overpriced. I think he's been skimming money from the company for months. Embezzlement? Possibly. I'm having our forensic accountants review everything, but if I'm right, Brett has bigger problems than unemployment. And Zara? She might have been involved, or she might have just been a convenient distraction while he cooked the books. Either way, this situation is about to get much more complicated. I hung up the phone feeling like I'd opened a door that led to a much larger room than I'd expected. What had started as a simple case of adultery was evolving into something that could destroy more than just 2 careers. But I wasn't backing down. Brett and Zara had made their choices, and now they would face whatever consequences those choices brought. The game was just getting started. Monday morning brought rain and revelations. I was reviewing project blueprints at my office when Vivian called with news that changed everything. The forensic audit found it, she said without preamble. Brett's been embezzling company funds for 8 months. Nearly $200,000 funneled through fake vendor accounts and inflated expense reports. I set down my coffee cup carefully. 200,000? Minimum. We're still tracing all the transactions, but it looks like he used the money to finance his lifestyle. Expensive dinners, hotel rooms, gifts for Zara, payments on that BMW he drives. What about Zara's involvement? That's where it gets interesting. She wasn't actively stealing money, but she was definitely benefiting from it. Designer clothes, jewelry, spa treatments, all paid for with Brett's embezzled funds. I thought about the new wardrobe I'd noticed, the expensive perfume, the sudden interest in upscale restaurants. Zara hadn't been cheating with just any married man. She'd been cheating with a thief who was buying her affection with stolen money. What happens now? I'm meeting with our legal team this afternoon to discuss criminal charges. This isn't just a personnel matter anymore, Drake. This is fraud on a scale that requires law enforcement involvement. After hanging up, I sat in my office staring at the rain streaking down the windows. 3 days ago, I'd thought I was dealing with a cheating wife. Now I was potentially married to an accomplice in a major embezzlement scheme. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Meet me at Brewster's Cafe on Main Street. 1 hour. We need to talk. Z. Zara was using a different phone, probably because she knew I might not answer her regular number. Part of me wanted to ignore the message, but curiosity won out. I needed to know how much she knew about Brett's financial crimes. Brewster's Cafe was a small, dimly lit place that served overpriced coffee to local business people. I arrived early and chose a corner table with a clear view of the entrance. Zara walked in exactly on time, looking nothing like the confident corporate manager I'd married. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, her makeup minimal, and she wore jeans and a sweater instead of her usual business attire. She looked younger, more vulnerable, and for a moment I remembered why I'd fallen in love with her. Then I remembered why I was divorcing her. "Thank you for coming," she said, sliding into the chair across from me. "You said we needed to talk." "Drake, I know you're angry. I know I hurt you. But this thing with the company, it's gotten out of control." "Has it?" "Because from my perspective, the truth is finally coming out." She leaned forward, her voice dropping to a whisper. "They're saying Brett stole money, lots of money, and they're implying I knew about it." "Did you?" "No. I mean, I knew he was generous. He paid for dinners, bought me gifts, but I thought he was just well off. I never asked where the money came from." I studied her face, looking for tells the way I'd learned in the army. Zara was lying, but not completely. She might not have known the specific details of Brett's embezzlement, but she'd known something wasn't right. "The jewelry, Zara, the clothes, the spa treatments. You never wondered how a middle manager could afford to spend thousands of dollars on his girlfriend." I didn't think about it that way. You didn't want to think about it. There's a difference." She sat back, tears forming in her eyes. "What am I supposed to do now? I lost my job, my reputation is destroyed, and now they're talking about criminal charges. My whole life is falling apart." "You should have thought about that before you started the affair." It wasn't supposed to happen like this. Brett said he loved me. He said he was going to leave his wife and we'd start over somewhere new. With stolen money? I didn't know it was stolen. Her voice rose enough to attract attention from other customers. I gestured for her to keep it down. Whether you knew or not, you benefited from it. That makes you complicit. Drake, please. I know I don't deserve your help, but I don't have anyone else. My family is furious with me. My friends won't return my calls. You're the only person who might understand. Understand what? That I made a mistake. A terrible, stupid mistake, but not a criminal one. I sipped my coffee while she waited for a response. Part of me felt sorry for her. She looked genuinely scared and alone. But a larger part remembered the lies, the deception, the months of being made to feel like I was imagining problems that were actually real. What do you want from me, Zara? I want you to tell them I didn't know about the money, that I was just naive, stupid, but not criminal. And why would I do that? Because you loved me once. Because we were married. Because it's the right thing to do. I finished my coffee and stood up. The right thing to do would have been staying faithful to your husband. The right thing would have been being honest when I asked about your late nights. The right thing would have been ending our marriage before starting something with Brett. Drake, you made your choices, Zara. Now you get to live with them. I left her sitting alone in the cafe, and for the first time since this whole mess started, I felt completely at peace with my decisions. That evening, Victor called with more information about Brett's background. Your boy Hammond has been busy, he said. I did some digging into his financial history, and this isn't his first time playing fast and loose with other people's money. What did you find? He was fired from his previous job 3 years ago for irregularities in expense reporting. No charges filed, but he left under suspicious circumstances. Before that, he had 2 other positions that ended abruptly. So this is a pattern. Looks like it. Guy's a professional scammer who uses charm and corporate positions to steal money and seduce women. Your wife wasn't his first victim, and she probably wouldn't have been his last. Victim? Poor choice of words. Accomplice, maybe. But Drake, I think Brett targeted her specifically because she had access to company systems and financial information. He needed someone on the inside to help cover his tracks. That possibility hadn't occurred to me. You think he seduced her to use her? I think he's a predator who identified a vulnerable target and exploited her for both personal and professional gain. The question is whether she figured that out before or after she got caught. After Victor hung up, I sat in my living room thinking about Zara's desperate plea for help. Had she been a willing participant in Brett's schemes, or just another victim of his manipulation? Either way, it wasn't my problem anymore. My phone rang again. This time, it was Vivian. Brett's been arrested, she said. FBI picked him up an hour ago at his apartment. They're charging him with wire fraud, embezzlement, and money laundering. What about Zara? They want to interview her, but no charges yet. The investigation is ongoing. I felt a strange mix of satisfaction and sadness. Justice was being served, but it was hard to watch someone I'd once loved face potential criminal prosecution. There's something else, Vivian continued. Brett's lawyer contacted our legal department. He's claiming Zara was the mastermind behind the whole scheme. Says she seduced him and convinced him to steal the money for her. That's ridiculous. Maybe, but he's desperate, and desperate people say whatever they think might save them. This could get ugly for your wife. Ex-wife, I corrected. I filed the divorce papers this afternoon. Good, because this story is about to get a lot more public, and you don't want to be legally connected to either of them when it does. As if on cue, my doorbell rang. Through the window, I could see a news van parked across the street and a reporter walking up my front steps. The real circus was just beginning. The media attention lasted exactly 1 week, but it felt like a lifetime. Reporters camped outside my house, my office, and even my favorite coffee shop, all wanting to know what it felt like to be married to a woman involved in a major corporate embezzlement scandal. I gave exactly one interview to the local business journal and kept my statement simple. I discovered my wife was having an affair, reported it to her employer, and filed for divorce. I had no knowledge of any financial crimes and have been fully cooperative with law enforcement. Brett Hammond's arrest made the front page of 3 newspapers and led the evening news for 2 consecutive nights. The story had everything journalists loved: corporate corruption, adultery, luxury hotels, and a CEO's revenge against her cheating husband. Vivian handled the media attention with professional grace, positioning herself as the vigilant executive who'd uncovered fraud and protected her company's interests. She never mentioned the personal motivation behind her investigation, and I respected her for keeping our collaboration private. Zara, meanwhile, had hired a criminal defense attorney and was fighting to stay out of prison. Her lawyer's strategy seemed to be painting her as an innocent victim of Brett's manipulation, which might have worked if not for the evidence showing she'd actively helped him cover his tracks. The FBI's investigation revealed that Zara had used her access to company systems to alter expense reports, delete suspicious emails, and create false documentation for Brett's fake vendor accounts. Whether she'd done it out of love, greed, or fear didn't matter to federal prosecutors. On a Thursday morning in early April, I was reviewing architectural plans in my office when my assistant knocked on the door. "There's a woman here to see you," she said. "Says her name is Janet Morrison, and it's about your divorce case." I didn't recognize the name, but I told her to send the visitor in. A woman in her 50s entered, wearing a conservative business suit and carrying a leather briefcase. "Mr. Torren, thank you for seeing me. I'm Janet Morrison, and I represent several women who've had encounters with Brett Hammond over the past few years." I gestured for her to sit down. "What kind of encounters?" "The same kind your wife experienced. Brett has a pattern of targeting married women in professional settings, seducing them, and using them to facilitate financial crimes." She opened her briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. 3 women in 2 different cities, all married, all working for companies where Brett held management positions, all used as unwitting accomplices in embezzlement schemes. I flipped through the documents: police reports, divorce filings, financial records, and photographs of women who looked remarkably similar to Zara: young, attractive, professionally ambitious, and apparently susceptible to Brett's particular brand of manipulation. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because your wife's case is the first one where we have enough evidence to establish a clear pattern of predatory behavior. The other women were too ashamed or scared to pursue charges, but Zara's situation is different." "How so?" "She's facing federal charges, which means she has incentive to cooperate with prosecutors. If she testifies about Brett's methods, how he recruited her, manipulated her, and used her, it could help convict him on additional charges." "And help the other women?" "Potentially. If we can prove Brett's pattern of behavior, the other victims might be willing to come forward. Civil suits, criminal charges, justice for everyone he's hurt." I closed the folder and handed it back to her. "What does this have to do with me?" "Your wife trusts you. Despite everything that's happened, you're the one person she might listen to. If you could convince her to cooperate with the broader investigation, I'm not going to help Zara avoid consequences for her actions. I'm not asking you to. I'm asking you to help other women get justice for theirs." That afternoon, I found myself back at Brewster's Cafe, waiting for Zara to arrive for another conversation I'd never planned to have. She walked in looking exhausted, her face pale and drawn from weeks of stress. "You said it was important," she said, sitting across from me without ordering anything. I slid Janet Morrison's business card across the table. "There were others, Zara. Other women Brett targeted the same way he targeted you." She picked up the card, read it, and looked back at me with confusion. "I don't understand." "Brett's done this before, multiple times in multiple cities. He finds married women in vulnerable positions, seduces them, and uses them to steal money from their employers. That's not… We weren't… She stopped, processing the implications. Are you saying he didn't love me? I'm saying he's a professional predator who identified you as a useful target. The color drained from her face. How many others? At least 3 that this lawyer knows about. Probably more. Zara sat in silence for several minutes, staring at the business card. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. He said I was special, that he'd never felt this way about anyone before. He probably said the same thing to all of them. The gifts, the attention, the way he made me feel important. She looked up at me with tears in her eyes. It was all fake. The money was definitely fake. It was stolen from his employer, just like he stole from Vivian's company. Oh God. She put her head in her hands. I'm such an idiot. You made mistakes, Zara. But you weren't the only one, and you don't have to face this alone. What do you mean? This lawyer represents the other women. If you cooperate with the investigation, testify about Brett's methods, it could help convict him and prevent him from doing this to anyone else. She looked at me suspiciously. Why do you care what happens to Brett? I don't. But I care about preventing other marriages from being destroyed the way ours was. And what happens to me? That's between you, your lawyer, and the prosecutors. But cooperating with the investigation might be better than trying to fight the charges alone. Zara left the cafe with Janet Morrison's card and a lot to think about. I drove home feeling like I'd finally closed the loop on the most complicated chapter of my life. 2 weeks later, the news broke that Brett Hammond had been indicted on 17 additional charges related to a multi-state pattern of fraud and manipulation. Zara had agreed to testify as part of a plea agreement that would likely keep her out of prison in exchange for her cooperation. Vivian called me that evening with the final piece of the puzzle. Brett's agreed to plead guilty to all charges, she said. 15 years in federal prison, full restitution to all victims, and forfeiture of all assets. What about the other women? 3 of them have filed civil suits. With Brett's confession and Zara's testimony, they'll likely win substantial settlements. And Zara? Probation, community service, and restitution. She'll avoid prison, but her career in corporate management is over. I hung up the phone and walked out to my back patio, where I'd been grilling dinner the night Brett showed up drunk and threatening. The evening was warm and peaceful, with birds singing in the oak trees and the smell of spring flowers in the air. My divorce would be final in 30 days. My house was quiet, clean, and entirely my own. My work was going well, my reputation was intact, and I had the satisfaction of knowing that justice had been served. For the first time in months, I felt completely at peace. The next morning brought one final surprise: a handwritten letter from Zara, delivered to my office. Drake, it read, I know I have no right to ask for your forgiveness, but I want you to know that I understand what I lost when I betrayed you. You were a good husband, and you deserved better than the lies I told and the choices I made. I hope someday you'll find someone who appreciates what I was too stupid to value. Thank you for helping me find the courage to do the right thing, even if it came too late to save our marriage. Zara. I read the letter twice, then filed it away with all the other documents from this chapter of my life. It was a good apology, honest and heartfelt, but it didn't change anything. Some mistakes can't be undone, and some trust can't be rebuilt. But some endings, I realized, are actually new beginnings. The story was over, and I was ready to start writing the next one.